Okay, thank you very much for coming. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is today, it's 7:30, April 9, 2012. My name is Colleen Stanley, and I'm the committee chairperson for this budget discussion this evening. Tonight with me, I have here my committee members, Mr. Greg Seabury, Mr. Fred Visconti, Mr. Michael Haddad, Mr. Joe Scazzafava. I also have with us tonight Mayor Mark Boughton and our Director of Finance, David St. Clair. And from the school, we have Superintendent Dr. Sal Pascarella, Deputy...
Yeah, the plug isn't working here.
Oh, boy, budget cuts.
Okay, I'm just, you've got the introductions up here. I'm gonna start off with the Board of Education. We have with us tonight Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Sal Pascarella, Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Glass, Director of Human Resources and Counsel to the Board of Education, Kim Thompson. We also have Assistant Finance Director, Joe Martino. Members of the Board of Education that are here tonight, their chairperson is Gladys Cooper. She's here with us tonight. We have Richard Gianelli. We have with us Gary Falkenthal, Richard Hawley, and Sandy Steichen. We have ex officio members of the council. Mary Teichholz is here with us tonight. Andrew Wetmore, Paul Rotella, Jack Knapp, Warren Levy, Joe Cavo, Phil Cola, Ben Chinese, Dwayne Perkins, Shane Agershev, Donnie Taylor, and Stephen Darcy. Is there anyone that I missed?
Okay.
Phil Cola? I have him on. Phil Cola.
Phil's here twice.
Yeah,
Steve Darcy?
I got him. Did anybody not hear their name? Phil Cola? Thank you. And also, thank you so much, members of the public, for coming out. I do want to let you know that tonight, there will not be any members of the public. I don't think we'll be able to talk tonight. We have a lot to cover. And you will have the opportunity, we're here tonight to listen to what the mayor's budget is. And we'll be able to discuss, you know, what can happen or down the road. You will also have the opportunity at that point, members of the public, to speak at the public hearing, which is April 16th at 7 o'clock. And then once again, you'll have another opportunity before the May meeting. Is that right?
30 minutes.
Right.
That's May 1st.
May 1st meeting, which is at 7:30. So I would ask that if you have any questions, jot them down, make notes, bring them with you, because I don't want your questions to be unanswered, but we do have a lot to cover, and I just want to make sure that what we need to get done tonight gets completed. Okay, so why don't we first start off with the mayor?
Thanks. Thanks, Madam Chairwoman. Just to kind of recap and give folks sort of a broad policy decision in terms of how things work. For those of you that don't know, the city cannot tell the Board of Education how to spend their money. So if you're here for your favorite program or whatever that might be, we have no authority to say you have to keep music and get rid of science, or keep science and get rid. That's not our role here. Our role is to appropriate a lump sum of money per state statute and then the board just determines where the best, how to best prioritize that money and implement those dollars. So, don't want to disappoint you, but we're not going to be talking about any specific programs because we can't impact them even if we wanted to. Having said that, let's kind of recap where we were. Last year's appropriation, as amended, was $114,895,291. This year's proposed operating budget includes a $900,000 general fund increase to $115,795,291. That is essentially an increase of almost $1 million over last year's budget. There's been some other internal bookkeeping things that we've been working closely with the Board of Ed on and their finance department. One of them is that the Board of Ed has traditionally carried the charge back for the Parks and Rec department to maintain the grounds and fields. To give you the history of why that is and why that's been in there over the last 30 years, it's, I think back in the maybe the early 90s, the Board of Ed used to have janitors that would cut the grass and maintain the fields. In order to save money, the Board of Ed contracted with the city to cut the fields and take care of the outsides of the buildings, and then the janitors take care of the insides of the buildings, and then the city would charge back those costs to the Board of Ed. At that time, that saved the Board of Ed a significant amount of money, because less janitors means less payroll, it means less overhead and insurance and all those other things. But this year, we're proposing that the city pick up the tab on the chargeback. It's approximately $385,000. And then on top of that, there's some continuing education money that we like to appropriate as an ongoing yearly basis of $300,000, which can be used for general fund expenditures. So the total increase that we're proposing year over year, counting those other two areas, is approximately $1.6 million of new money, on top of the $114 million. In addition to that, the state of Connecticut has, through the governor's proposed budget, has increased the city ECS funding to $1.7 million. So we look at this as a total increase of $3.2 million over last year's budget. Now, that doesn't meet the request of the board. The request of the board was 5.1 or over $5 million, but the reality is that we can never meet that kind of request given the impact that would have to taxpayers. And I'm going to talk a little bit about impact in a second. There is some concern, and understandably so, amongst Dr. Sal and Dr. Bill and the team about how to deploy that $1.7 million. Part of the uncertainty is the fact that the state really isn't sure how they're going to deploy that $1.7 million. I can tell you that I've had discussions offline with officials in the state government that basically are going to, basically the message they're saying through the legislation is, hey, we're going to give you more money. We want to know what you're going to do with it. We want some accountability with the money we're going to give you. That additional money does not come to the city, it will go directly to the board, but they want us to propose and present a school improvement plan. And they listed in the statute some specific things that the plan should include, but are not limited to, and that don't have to include. So you can really look at it, I think, much more flexibly than people are concerned about, but I understand the trepidation, and David understands that as well. So we're going to work closely with Dr. Sal and Dr. Bill and Kim and the team to deploy that money as best we can to meet the goals set forth by Gladys and her team at the Board of Ed, but also to be able to fund ongoing operations with as minimal disruption as possible. So there was some discussion about, well, for example, expanding all-day kindergarten would clearly fit within the parameters of what those dollars are for, would certainly be something that the parents have asked for. You know, we've heard it as a continuing theme over the years. We couldn't do it for everybody. We just don't have the space. We have significant space limitations, but we could potentially offer more seats next year than we offered this year, and that's sort of the goal. What's going to have to happen, though, is Bill's going to have to put together, and Sal are going to have to put together a very nice, glossy school improvement plan, of which many of the things we're already doing. And we're probably going to have to trek up to Hartford at some point and pitch the plan to the commissioner and to the folks up there to say, here's how we think we can best deploy this money without undercutting our current services as much as we possibly can. So that's going to be a little bit of work. We're also, my advice to Dr. Sal has been to, and will be, to oversubscribe the money. One of the things I'm hearing from the legislature and from folks up there is that some towns aren't going to opt to even access their money because they don't want to be bothered doing a school improvement plan and all the aggravation for such a small amount of money, relatively small amount of money. Danbury's getting the largest increase in state funding of any city and town, with the exception of East Hartford, as the bill currently stands. So some towns, though, if they're only getting $200,000, I talked to the mayor of Norwalk, for example, they don't even know if they're gonna apply for their money, because it's just more of a headache than it's actually worth. What the state's gonna do is take that money and run it back through the formula to distribute more dollars to cities and towns. For those folks that don't use it, it'll be put back in. So it's important that when we present our plan, we don't present a $1.7 million plan, we present a $5 million plan. Throw as much against the wall as we possibly can, and know that the commissioner's gonna pick and choose how best to deploy those extra programs. There's a potential to get more money than what you asked for, but make sure in the first 1.7 we break out what we really need to get through the coming year. So that's kind of how we come up with a general number. Now, we've been meeting, I'm gonna say once a week, maybe sometimes twice a week, with Dr. Sal and his team related to where this is. We understand that there are trepidations about the 1.7 million. Dave and I agreed through some accounting measures to hold them harmless next year. For example, what if they apply and then they get 1.5 million? Well, we'll figure out a way to make up the $200,000 difference for you, up to what the ECS grant is. So there's some other internal bookkeeping things that if you want to ask, you can talk to Dave and I about. We'll discuss that publicly here. But there's a 1% retainage that the board keeps each year. We're allowing them to use that for ongoing operations. And also next year to start programming that towards technology expansion throughout the buildings. Although we may do some technology in a borrowing that we're going to do in the fall for school expansion. So it's a difficult challenge for them, but we also have to understand the pressures that our taxpayers are under right now. Give you a couple of statistics. In January and February, we received 162 notices of foreclosure on homes here in the city of Danbury. That's 162 families that have children that could potentially lose their home. To fully fund the Board of Education's request, you're looking at a tax increase of about 9% over what was last year. I certainly can't, in good conscience, present that to the taxpayers, knowing that while a child may end up having 26 students in class, they get to go home to a shelter or to a hotel room because they lost their home during this economic crisis. So we have to be very cognizant of what the impact is on the spending, do everything we can to try to maximize our resources in terms of impact. So with that, we stand ready to answer any questions and any other discussions.
Do any of my members have any questions? David, do you want
No, I'll just reiterate what the mayor said. We've been working with the Board of Ed to try to, close the perceived gap as much as possible. And hopefully, it will continue to do that. And we expect that the state's gonna, meet that 1.7 to 2.2. That number's kind of a squishy number. Yeah, but we do expect that there's going to be at least 1.7. But if they do fall a little bit short, we do have, we'll have some provisions where we'll try to make up the gap.
I mean, I would say, Madam Chairman, that the good news is that we're so far ahead of the curve on a lot of the stuff that the legislation asked for. If you read the bill, wraparound services, we're doing that already. Some of the other co-learning things that are going on in the buildings, that's already a solid reflection of what we've been doing. We've had to file an improvement plan for the last few years with the state of Connecticut. We're not sure if anybody actually ever reads it, but we definitely have it on file there. So this gives us an opportunity to go out and strut our stuff and say, look, these are all the good things that are happening within the district. Yes, we have financial pressures, but so does every city and town in Connecticut. Look, I've talked to them in Britain today. They're talking about a no increase to the school budget, similar size as we have. I know Bristol's struggling. Communities of similar size. They're all doing the same thing we're doing. We're not doing anything differently. And I also, I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. The operating budget is not a complete reflection of the amount of money we spend in the Danbury public school systems. For example, there's $9.2 million we have to put in our pension fund this year to cover our municipal employees. A large portion of those employees in our pension fund are Danbury Board of Ed employees. They're secretarial staff, custodians, and paraprofessionals. If we were to carve out that contribution alone, that's $2 million that we have to put in to cover those pensions for those bargaining units. So Kim knows that when she goes into bargain in the spring and the summer, that one of the things on the table has got to be getting these pension costs under control, because they're eroding our ability to educate kids. And unfortunately, we required under these collective bargaining agreements to put that money in there. That's just one area. Not counting, probably we spent close to $11 million in new boilers, new windows at Danbury High School we put in this summer. Those will result significant fuel savings that are not necessarily reflected in the DOE budget, because you can't realize the savings until you actually do the work. However, it'll be there, September when the school's open. So, we feel confident that we're spending a significant amount of money out above and beyond what you see here in terms of school spending. It's difficult, it's challenging, and obviously we don't want to shortchange our children. We recognize the importance of spending here, but we also have to recognize the impact it has on our residents right now in a very difficult financial time for them.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
your contractual agreements with city unions have eliminated the pension for new employees, am I right?
That's correct.
Right. Do you know that the school board has any intentions of, that they negotiate with these?
Well, without discussing negotiating strategy in a public forum, I would
No.
say that, I would say that those expenditures have got to be on the table. We can't, for example, right now, we can't have a bifurcated pension system, number one. I have one pension system, our clerical staff here gets a defined contribution, and then another group of employees in the same system get pension. That's not gonna fly. So we've got to get everybody on the same page. The difference is that our contracts are in a different year than the paraprofessionals, for example. So they're rolling into those negotiations now. And, look, those things got to be part of the discussion if we're gonna wrestle these costs and put more money into the classroom. Somebody suggested to me, well, just don't put that money in there. It's a big deal. The problem is that your contribution grows exponentially each year. That's what the state did. Didn't work out really well for them. They ended up with $1 billion deficit. In fact, the state's pension system is still underfunded by about $20 billion. So the reason we're where we are is because we make those tough contributions when these times are difficult, and we're gonna do it this year. However, over the long term, if we're gonna bend the curve and put more money back into the classroom, we'll have to look at all those kinds of benefits, which will be on the table, I'm sure.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question. Dr. Sal, I'm looking at the budget you guys gave us last couple of weeks back, and you have projected budget for health, life, dental insurance. Is that concrete at this point?
No, thank you again for having us. That's all. As the mayor said, listen, they do, most of we get to talk about, I think, one of the best stories we have in town about our kids here. As the mayor said, there are some questions, I talk about the condition of funding, but this budget here is continual. When we submitted the budget back then in 5.03, it was a guesstimate. That was back in November, and there were contracts out there. There's still contracts that David and our Ed working on trying to reduce certain things. The board's looking at transportation. Healthcare is one of them as well. So the original submission that we had was about 5.7%, 5.62 thereabouts. We met with the company 4 times, and when they came into Danbury, that particular company was trying to make and have a presence in our area. And by acquiring Danbury, they did. So they've been working with us. One, they would like other groups and others to take a look at that. And I think we've been good customers of theirs in terms of handling our business with them. They're much more efficient. Therefore, by being more efficient, us working, they've been able to reduce the amount of money for our renewals. So right now, they're coming back, I think it's next week again, for possibly another go-around. We have in the budget 5.2. They're pretty solid on that number. We were hoping to get it down to about 3%, and I don't know that, or less, but so that's still evolving. So it could be you're shaving a little bit off of that, but not much more. At one time, when we were there at the school, we were getting renewals at 17, 18%. with Blue Cross. And we rebid out, with the new company. We said to this company, we may have to go out again, and that they've sharpened their pencil. The state's looking at a plan, but they're not ready to move, for us to move into it. One, it's too costly, and it's just not a plan that we think we need to about at this point. So,
So it's not something you would even consider right now because you don't know.
it doesn't, from what we see on the table, we'd be paying more money. Makes no sense, and it's not defined. And they're waiting for one or two of the bigger companies to see if they're in, which will make it much more competitive for the company we're with to compete against. So right now, we're waiting. We'll know a little more in about another week to see if they're shaving off of that.
But you're down to one company?
We have one company now.
Yeah.
I think the strategy is not to disrupt the superintendent, but the strategy is to talk to Cigna first, see if you can get them down to where you need to be. If that doesn't work, then you can go out and see if Anthem wants to play a little bit, come back into the marketplace. One of the things I'll tell you, the board, I know Dr. Sal knows this, but Kim knows this, but switching carriers is a clerical nightmare. So it's gotta be worth your while to do that. You can't switch carriers for $100,000 because you'll eat up $200,000 in clerical time trying to chase down all the headaches and the problems, and this one didn't get covered and it used to get covered for here. So it's gotta be worthwhile, I think, to the board to do that, but I would assume that the phone call will be jingling over to Anthem shortly. Actually, so I have a connection there.
The last time we did this, it was about an 8% savings. It made it worthwhile. But even going over there, it can't be something that can be done unilaterally. We have to negotiate with all our unions. We have the right to pursue that, providing that the plans are horsing. And it's in that comparison where you have the issues as the mayor was talking about. But right now, we think that, they're being fair. We think they can sharpen it a little bit more, but we have our eye on some others. The state plan is a plan that the municipalities are looking at, but they're not ready to roll that out yet, just yet. So we're looking at all of that. So it's still a perpetual motion.
Thank you.
If I may, last year about this time, we were in a similar situation with Anthem, and we kept hammering at them, and they didn't come back with, where we want them to be. So we put back out there, and we had Cigna bid on it, as well as Anthem, and in the end, we ended up going with Cigna, and it proved out to be some significant savings. They're in a similar situation right now.
You're with
We're with
Cigna.
Cigna.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, Anthem wants to come back and play in the marketplace. So what I did last year to Anthem was our Anthem was our carrier, and so was Cigna. And I said, look, here's the number I need to get to. Whoever gets there first gets the business. And I gave them a target number to reduce our plan. Is it a one-shot, one-year savings? It might be, but in this world, every little nickel helps. And what happens is if they're $500,000 lower than they were, the crawlback, it's harder for them because now they got to make up the 500 next year. So, but the percentage gets high. So you say, what are you doing? You can't hit us with an 8% increase. So you can play one off another. But I think that, again, not speaking for the board, but I think the superintendent wants to first meet with Cigna, give them the opportunity to earn the business, and then if it really doesn't seem like movement, they may look at other options. That's me.
Have you been able to give Cigna a target number?
Mm-hmm.
And you're just waiting?
Mm-hmm. As Mark said, our fear when they dropped so precipitously from Blue Cross was the renewal. And actually, they have been they've been very competitive and under a lot of numbers around, even with that drop. But corollary to that, I think the board needs to take a feather in their cap. Some of the negotiations that have been going on in terms of co-premium shares and other deductions has really, created a ballast point for those things. So our experience rates are reasonable. Their renewal rates are because, the other side is going down as well. The employers picked up some, so it all works in tandem kind of, And I think they realized, that's what I was trying to say, we've been working together. At one time, they had, the Blue Cross came in after them, right? Didn't they have Cigna? And then they went to Blue Cross.
When I was there, then
Yeah.
we went.
They tried to get back
I think Cigna had been
in.
there in the early part of the 90s, late part of the 90s.
And then they got.
Went back to
bought out.
Anthem,
Yeah.
and then they went back, now you're back at Cigna.
So they'd like to keep our business, and for a lot of reasons. I mean, they picked up the town, they picked up, so we're hoping that, they come within our coverage. They've certainly reduced quite a bit since our initial conversations in October, November, when putting this together.
Okay, now I have a question. Now, implementing what your suggestions are with implementing more students in full-day kindergarten.
It's a possibility.
It's a possibility. Is
Right.
it a possibility on your end? I mean, because we all know that once the funds are
Well, the-
provided, we don't have any say in.
The funds, no matter whatever glossy we give to the state, their primary goal is to reduce the achievement gap. Danbury had a visit 3 years ago by Cambridge, and they've made hard recommendations to us, really none of other towns. So we've taken a lot of initiatives at the high school and the middle school, but not necessarily a lot of resources, which is what we have to take a step forward to reduce that gap. So whatever we do with these added funds, conditionally would be how they want to know strategically how you're going to reduce that. Full-day kindergarten is certainly one of the primary strategies to do that. And the board has been talking about it for a number of years, the town has, and if that becomes a reality, we have a proposal to look at how one might do that. I think it's something you can do over time. You know, we looked at the enrollment, we're growing, and you're gonna be voting in something in November or possibly for some additions, but it's pocket, which means there are some schools with some available classrooms. We may have to do some altering of how those classes are used. For example, technologically, by going to Cal's Computer on Wheels, where they used to be more of a static program where all the computers in one room. Well, if you can now put them on a cart, you create another room. So we're looking at ways like that, and if I think we need to be we're at a tipping point, if we can access funds to do one of the primary interventions at the early grades for closing the achievement gap, we should look at that. And we think, in looking at it, we could phase this in over a few years. By the time we add the additions across the district, and if the resources stay for the years, because it's roughly, I think it's 400 to 500,000 a year for the next 3-4 years in order to do it. We could have full-day kindergarten phased in a multi-year fashion, as the mayor has indicated, and we should do that.
And just to
based on
follow up,
space.
I know that Head Start has kind of bridged the gap because we didn't have full-day kindergarten.
Yeah, they've been.
How will this affect the Head Start program?
Full-day kindergarten should assist it.
Assist it?
Yeah, I mean, you know.
So you'll
if-
still have the funding available that's in the numbers that we're providing?
Well,
Well,
it's a different
I think
question.
Head Start remembers preschool. So, right, one of the things that we've discussed internally is that Head Start primarily is an all-day program. So you have somebody's in preschool going to all-day program, and then when we migrate them to kindergarten, they're going half-day. And it really doesn't make a lot of educational sense, academic sense, to have somebody going to full-day
Okay.
preschool and then half-day kindergarten. So we're trying to close that gap a little bit so that you have a continuum of experience that the child can excel at. You know, I have my own personal feelings as it relates to preschool and birth to 3 programs, but because I sometimes think they cross over into custodial areas that are important, but are they part of the core mission of the district? There's no question that having somebody come seamlessly out of a preschool into a full-day kindergarten has a tremendous amount of academic benefit. And if academics is what the district's about, then that's something that eventually we're gonna have to look at as we move forward. To roll out even a modest expansion, and these numbers are very preliminary, it would cost you an additional roughly $400,000. That would be a modest expansion next year, assuming you had space available, right? And the space is available in the right spots too, because that's a whole other headache. And then each year you would try to expand those numbers until we get enough space completed through the renovations to be able to accommodate everybody. But it's a modest proposal, but I think it's one that the Department of Ed and the Commissioner will like, because they'll say, that's how you should be deploying this money. Now, at the same time, I'm gonna make an argument saying, well, we wanna do that, but you gotta help us over here, because the legislation gives the Commissioner broad powers as to how this money is spent. So that's an argument I have to make along with Sal and some others, Dr. Pascal and some other folks. Because I think we will be able to point, hey, your money really did make a difference. And that's what they want to see, is that they're not just spending money on fuel oil and electricity, that we're enhancing the academic experience for kids. So that's why, all day kindergarten makes so much sense, right? So we have a full day program, and we can, derive the best academic achievement out of our students and help work on the achievement gap.
One of the other things I was wondering about, we just hired a new IT
We did.
director.
He just started today.
Okay,
So
I know.
I went down there, had wires all tangled around it, and keyboards everywhere, so.
And I
Didn't
know.
notice the plug didn't work down?
And
I gotta yell
I know
in the
every year.
morning. We did, he actually, one of the things that I know that Bill and David have been talking about is, Frank it comes from the New Haven Public Schools, he's the IT director of the New Haven Public School, which is a big district in terms of a lot of infrastructure. How can we best deploy his talents to help marry up what the city's doing and what the school district is doing, while still having autonomy in terms of our equipment purchasing and leasing and all this stuff that we do here and over there. Getting into the cloud has been a big move for us. I want to Wi-Fi all the buildings up. I just got the price tag and I need a defib. Can you just go to Radio Shack and buy a router? It's a problem, but eventually I want to see all the buildings Wi-Fi in the district. Because that sets up your.
That sets up the cows and everything.
Right, your iPads and everything.
But that's
else.
something that will affect this.
Yes, it does, because one of the things we've been talking about is how we can, they've been meeting regularly, the town and the two departments. One of the things we talked about, which is we eliminated the director's position, put it back in the budget, because we just need to do that. But with this onset of this, we agreed to, we agreed to handle it 50-50. But the mayor said, look, I'll just take care of it, we just need to coordinate that, so we can take the credit out of our budget for the entire position, while we have the workings together of the director and our folks.
I just want Frank to get his.
Yeah. We'll need someone to coordinate the efforts minimally, but as far as getting another director, we're gonna try to have one director assist us with the district vision, when we keep our personnel and not dead end. That'll be a recommendation I give to the board, but ultimately it becomes a board decision. But it can realize quickly some savings by having that coordinated efforts between the town and the school, so they could work.
Mr. Visconti, you had-
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Through the chair, I was just wondering, we were touched on Head Start program, if Mr. Maloney, if that would be all right to have him shed some light on what their program consists of and what they've been doing.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. The Head Start program currently has 17 classrooms at the Danbury Board of Education, funded roughly half by the Board of Ed, half by the federal grant that comes through us. Of those 17, 4 are full day, so 13 are just part-day. The 4 that are full day, the full day component is actually funded by the state through something called Care for Kids, which is a program to make childcare available for parents who are working. So that's a very important aspect as well. The concern I have, and I'll just put it in the very biggest terms, and that's why there are a lot of Head Start folks here tonight. Our understanding, hearing from various members of the Board of Ed, not the administration, but the Board of Ed members, is that if the budget as it sits today is the final budget, there are likely to be very substantial layoffs by the Board of Ed directed to some large extent at the Head Start program. So that's our concern, is that we're very concerned that the Board of Ed is given the totality of the resources, is likely to find itself in a situation where they are going to be advancing layoff proposals in Head Start.
So your concerns are with the layoffs of the employees for the Head Start program? Okay.
This is a big concern of mine, Congressman. So, how many, if the board was to cut, because the mayor says we don't have any control over what to do, how many students would this affect, and how many staff members would this affect? And I understand, Your Honor, that they are building a building.
Yes.
As of now,
The building is wonderful, and I thank the
no,
mayor.
Mayor said, is that true, Mark?
Just awarded the contract.
Just awarded, you mentioned it to us a little while, I didn't know that, just by you guys.
Oh, the building is wonderful,
I
and
think Mr. Maloney knows that.
and I
We've
thank
been
the-
talking about it for years.
thank the mayor for his ongoing support.
So the
That-
question is, how many staff members and how many students? And my main concern is, these are the children, I've been working in that school board 20 years ago when we tried to get all that kindergarten.
Right.
And this is like filling the gap
Right.
until we get it. Of course, when the building is in, then they'll release some more space, but if they cut the funding, that'd be less children.
Well,
And these are the most vulnerable,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely, two different points, right? First of all, the building doesn't add any classrooms for Head Start.
I'm talking if they cut the
No,
funding.
no, let me get there, okay? Building the building simply allows Head Start to make room in the school system
Right.
for the needs of the school system. So Head Start's delighted to get the building, but Head Start already has 17 classrooms, and we won't end up with less than that. Okay? So that, the building is not, doesn't go to operations, okay? As to what you're saying right now, there's 17 Head Start classrooms in the school system. There's 20 kids per classroom, that's 240 kids. We actually have about 290 kids who are Danbury residents, but we accommodate those additional kids because we have other classrooms at Laurel Gardens too, and at St. Peter's Church too, okay? So you tell me, there are 35 employees on the Board of Ed payroll. Again, about half, that payroll is funded, about half by us and about half by the Board of Ed. And if you cut half of it, you'd lay off 17 and a half people. If you cut a quarter of it, you'd lay off 8 people. So it's up to the Board of, and you're absolutely right, it's up to the Board of Ed to say what the cut's gonna be. That's not your job, as the mayor correctly pointed out. But if the Board of Ed doesn't have in total enough resources to preserve it, then they're gonna have to go someplace. And I'm very concerned that that's exactly the wrong direction, because we can show you all kinds of statistics. Danbury has a great Head Start program, right? Their Head Start programs vary around the country. Danbury has among the best in the country. The last evaluation by the feds was 100%, A+, right across the board, 100%. So the fact that the Board of Ed makes that kind of investment in the local Head Start program pays off for the Head Start program. Pays off, therefore, for the kids' performance. Again, we can provide, anyone who wants, lots of statistics about how much the performance of those kids improves because they're in Head Start. That's exactly what the state is trying to tell other school systems to do. And for us to go backwards to say, oh, well, we'll lay off Head Start people and pretend we're going to make progress in terms of closing our gap, we're cutting off the program that probably does more than any other to close the performance gap. So that's our concern. It's a very legitimate concern. This is what we're hearing from, this is what we're hearing from members of the Board of Ed, not from,
Right.
right.
What the mayor was suggesting, or from what I understand, is we're gonna be going from full-time Head Start program, and
It isn't
That
though,
would-
Madam Chair. Only 4 of the Head Start classrooms are full-time, and the full-time component isn't funded by the Board of Ed.
but right now we only had part-time kindergarten.
And we only have part-time Head Start.
Well, let me just, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, we actually have each building, no, I don't know how many years this goes back.
Oh, about 30.
We haven't found it.
Maybe longer than
Yeah.
that.
Each building has at least one full-day program, currently. So Danbury has at each building one full-day program. It's done by lottery. Some years ago, it was done differently by need, but right now, it's done that way. We have about 900 students that come in. We have around 81% of our kids, 82% of our kids have quality preschool program before they come to kindergarten. The average is somewhere in the vicinity of about 75% for the state, 70% for the city. So we exceed that because of the programs that you have throughout the area, which is a good thing. Even with that, we've struggled to close the gap. So therefore, we've added, time has been a constant, and we've tried to create more time for kids with these wraparound programs. But they've been, by and large, paid for by parents for that. So by going to full-day kindergarten, more kids are access to that full-day kindergarten in conjunction with the preparation. That should start eliminating that gap over time. That's our hope. In 08-09, for example, we had 236 kids that the board served, that we served in a Head Start program for $298,000, almost $200,000. In 09 and 10, we serviced 251 kids, and it was $396 a year. But what happened to Head Start, same thing that happened to us. Washington pulled the rug out from underneath them, which left the cities again, not the state, the cities who chose to do this, to pay the freight. So we went from 396 in 09-10, we serviced in 10-11, 887 kids. It cost us almost $500,000, $496,000. We had to carry the rest, or Danbury had to, within our budget. And 11-12, this year, it went up to $585,000, even though we shaved it back last year by 50% with some internal stuff that we did. And we serviced, at least my numbers, it's probably more like 290. These are October 1, they're about 287. So you can see how it just kind of exponentially grew, and we've not gone there, while at the same time, the overall structure of the school had reduced from K, when I call from 8 to 3 o'clock. And the board's position is not the goodness or badness of co-curricular or preschool. We know the value of it. It is the primary mission of what we do, and how can we support that program? I wouldn't want to see any kind of precipitous drop in the preparation of kids as they come to kindergarten. And I think one thing that Danbury has, some other places haven't had, and although it looks this way publicly, we try to work together very hard to make a difference for kids. We will continue to work either with the governor or the rest, as Jim and I talked today, some of these funds, if there are more funds available, can that apply to this? Well, that's the million-dollar question. If we're building on something good, our position is don't pull it away because we have nothing to build on before we can access the money. So if the money comes to us with some flexibility, you can maybe provide more time so they can assist over time so that they can plan better if in fact we have to reduce those programming at the preschool, but not reduce the program itself, but possibly funding. But we need some time to do that. The state of Connecticut has not made their final decision yet, and we won't know that for quite a while. That's the dilemma, and I appreciate knowing that if we plan on the 1.7 and it's not, or whatever, it's 2 million or 3 million over and above, that if we're shortfall, that was our concern, how do we close the gap? Well, that really is a comfort level for us.
We're not gonna let you hang
Yeah,
out.
no, I appreciate that, and I think that's nice to hear, because that was our concern.
I do want to say, Sal, though, that there is, and maybe I'm just venting, and this is really not our decision, but there's something fundamentally wrong that we have to keep picking up state and federal grants that run out. It's not fair to the city, it's not fair to the taxpayers. If the federal government doesn't think it's worthwhile funding, why are we then being asked to double our funding for one program or state grants? And I think that the board has got to understand, I just want to lay down a marker right now. If we accept a grant that's a 2 or 3 year grant and it involves hiring 10 employees, don't expect when that grant runs out that you can just roll that back into the budget and expect us to fund it. It's not fair and moves us away from the core mission of funding K through 12 and what we're supposed to do. Disrespect of what Jim's program is, Jim's program's been with us for 40 years. It's a little, I would consider that a little bit different. But if what you're saying tonight is, well, the reason it doubled in price from 300 to 585 is because the Fed said we're not going to fund it anymore, that's a little unfair to ask it to come out of our pocket. I'm just, somebody's got to back down to Washington and say, you got to give us more money.
Just to provide some clarification, the federal government hasn't cut the Head Start program. The Head Start staff of the Board of Ed, however, are in the bargaining units of the Board of Ed, and the increased costs have been driven by the bargaining unit negotiations. So the feds, so everyone's clear, feds haven't backed away from the Head Start program at all.
Okay.
But the costs have increased, yes, they have.
That's Kim's fault.
So now we know,
But keep working on it, right?
But that compression factor caused us to lose a literacy grant, another grant, because we follow that axiom. When that grant went away, we eliminated 12, 14 positions.
I know, we just got to be really careful
Yeah.
about that, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. But that's the funding stream that we have to service those children. And I got no real decision have been made. The board's going to begin talking about things on Wednesday night, because we just got a firm number last week. So we're looking at everything.
It's a work in progress. There will be more meetings with, Sam himself and his team. I will say, one of the benefits of having these financial challenges is that it really allows us to be almost seamless in terms of what we're trying to do. And we understand that the challenges facing the school board and facing the administration over there, and I think they get what our challenges over here. And we're gonna keep, nipping away at it all April, trying to get to where we need to be to provide a minimal impact and throw some bells and whistles on top of it.
Dr. Sal, I mean, I know that you've been in contact with the board members. You've been going over this for quite a while. What would be some of the cuts that would be, affect these numbers?
I sent over to you, this is what we gave them.
Yes,
And this is sort of, we've been, the last 2 years, been looking at. I mean, we really racked our brains, aside from the reframe about number of faculty that we've reduced and administrators, we've kept teachers in classrooms. So we've done everything possible to do that. But I think we're gonna have to revisit things that we didn't do on yet as an initial step. Does it mean that they'll do it? No. Pay to participate. Freshman athletics was on there.
I don't want to interrupt you, but last year, if I'm looking at this correctly, this was 2011, 2012. These were things that said were going to be done with the amount of money that was given to you last year that didn't get done, that didn't have to get done.
No, let me correct.
Well, you said you were going to get rid of French, and you kept French. I mean, like, there were certain
But
things.
see, that's the problem when we have this ongoing transparent conversation. We're talking here about what we're gonna do. It doesn't mean that we're gonna do it. I mean, all I am superintendent. People have to then, we make recommendations, and I concur with the recommendations. So as I'm talking to you, the things that are on here, Colleen, are things that we thought up. As anything else saying, these are possibilities. What happens if we turn around and we have, all of a sudden we get a no increase in our benefits, and we don't need the 500,000, just goes on the list, doesn't mean I'm gonna do it. We have been thinking, not last minute.
No, I know,
That's
this is
that-
going on for a couple of years.
That's right, so we've been thinking this through mindfully, what if we don't get the money? So there are things on here that we thought we'd have to consider. And the board did, and said, you know what, that's not something we wanna go. We wanna keep the kids in the classroom, and we don't wanna do that. Cost of French really didn't matter, because the number of kids that were taking it, did we have to eliminate it, didn't save us all that much? No, we didn't do it, so that's why. But it's on here. Freshman sports, I was sort of surprised, quite frankly, but that was something we felt it ought to happen, to save some money, and ultimately, it did happen. But they did cut it, but I'm recommending it to be in next year. It may be off.
And I do want to make a comment about that. This suggestion that you have for pay to participate when it comes to freshman sports or the sports program. I think you're categorizing a certain group of people. There's a lot of extracurricular activities that go on at the school, and I know that they have the class play that they do every year. That's a significant amount of money that it costs to put on that production, I'm sure. And are we gonna ask everybody who does any kind of participating in any extracurricular activities to pay to participate? Or are we just gonna focus on sports?
Just so happens, we have it across the board. It is, it's across the board.
I mean, I don't
It's a
wanna- I don't-
fairness.
I don't
For
wanna
me-
see it, but
for
I-
me,
it's
a
only
fairness
fair.
document. It's that's what I call it, it's participate, quota participate fee that they would have to contribute to. And it's for clubs, and it's for the interscholastic. Aside from, you already have band paying an inordinate amount of money, those parents, I can't believe that they're paying. I'm finding this out. You got hockey paying quite a bit of money, but it's a club sport. You got the play, they raise their own money and pay for a lot of it, other than the stipends that are on here, it's quota participate. And the ski team. But the plan that I'm gonna talk to the board about is one that everybody has to give a minimum. And the problem in that, quite frankly, all the cities I've talked to, if you do it, the collection rate, if you got 50%, you're very fortunate, okay? And the time and effort it takes to collect it is, it may not be worth doing. But on the table, rather than just eliminate, we have a proposal identifying the number of students, about 1,500 students between athletics and clubs. We have about $210,000 in stipends that we know we have for all of the activities that we have. It costs about, the whole thing costs about $750,000 to run. And if we charge, and we have it all broken out, multiple, families and what have you, what it might cost. With all of that, we figure we could maybe collect reasonably $70,000 to $100,000 if we were to do it. Now, some places charge $400 or $500 a sport, and they collect it. But our Derg in the cities have a real bad time with collection rates. But we looked at everybody paying their fair share.
I mean, I don't know if it was thought about, but I don't know if you could even maybe have so much money put aside for scholarships for kids to participate.
Yeah.
Instead of, just like they apply for reduced lunches, kids that don't have enough money to play should not be eliminated, but may be able to apply for maybe some type of scholarship that where the funds would be available for them if they have certain academic, if they're keeping their grades up, and, something for them to work towards. Just a suggestion, I know it's.
Well, athletics, for example, we have 860 students that participate, 440 of them are repeat students. There are clubs and activities, we have 540 students. We have a minimum that we would suggest, free and reduced lunch, we'd have to have a consideration. Even when I give scholarships, Sal's gotta make up the money for the scholarships. I mean, it's not like there's somebody writing me a check for this. But it's a fairness doctrine, the board needs to decide. For my money, everybody pays $25 or $50, no matter what you are. Go out and earn the money and play. And then, don't charge the rest
Something to
of
be
it.
said for that.
But the board's gotta look at that, and we don't wanna eliminate kids to play, so we called the city, right? We asked them what their collection rate was. Did we get a good answer? Not
Marching
really.
band's hard, different fees that they have. Marching band's a good example, as Sal was talking about. If you look in the budget, there's money allocated for the marching band, but they pay on average $700-800 just to be in the marching band. That's out of their own pocket per student. So it's for uniforms and then all those things, already. Pocket about $1,500.
And you've never had anybody complain that they wanted to participate and couldn't afford the $700 to $800 extra to be in it?
The marching band club takes care of that. In other words, they have their own system for doing things. That's outside of the board's.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Well, what you have something that's been a known tradition. And hockey was not. Hockey came into being for our school maybe about 5 years ago, and the board was very strict with them, that we would only let them use our name because they want to participate in the CIC. But we couldn't support it money-wise, we didn't have the money, so they were used to it. But what they're doing, they're raising money. They're nickel, I don't want to say nickel and dime, but they're going out and the kids are raising money. If they can't raise it, parents are paying it. Okay, I mean, it's a catch-22, so how many people are out there knocking on doors? How many clubs can raise money? Every time the board goes through a trip to Europe, the thing they ask, how do kids can't afford to go? What do we do? It's always been a concern for them, and it's, well, the kids have to raise their money or what? They don't go. And, so it's kind of, you want to give the kids the experience, but you don't know, in athletics, for example, how many kids may never come to the door because their parents can't raise the money or the kids have to work. We don't know. We just don't know. But just providing scholarships, Colleen, I don't think would solve the problem unless somebody said, hey, Danbury, I'm gonna set aside $50,000 here for scholarships to kids that can't pay. That's not part of our operational budget. We don't have that. But anyway, I have a proposal that would be what we call pay to participate across the board. But ultimately, the board would have to decide how to handle that. So we've tried to look at everything. And this list reflects that kind of thinking so that we're not here in the late part of the year saying, okay, we're gonna do this. Just not gonna do that.
Okay, is there anything that's not on this list that we should know about? That has been added or thought about? Since you've had your discussions?
Well, let me just see here, let me just make sure something, because I think there was some.
And any board members, is there anything that you wanna add? Sandy?
No, thank you.
I don't see, I think Jim talked about Head Start, I don't see that on here. Even though we did a reduction last minute, I don't believe I see it on here. So that would be something that's in consideration. But you can see here, elimination of full-day kindergarten. We didn't do that. That was one of the things that we were looking at. Elimination of, cut the textbooks, and we did. But, when we talked to David, we may budget that, but things happen in our budget. People won't get hired, people won't take benefits and what have you. And David knows, we'll talk, if there's some money in there and kids need books, what we'll do is reallocate through a budget transfer, buy those textbooks. So, but we can't anticipate people not taking their benefits, for example. Or when we hire a teacher, we put in a certain amount of money thinking we could recruit people with a master's and 5 years experience. Sometimes we'll get a second and third year person, and that's a lot less money. Or chemistry, biology, and things like that, we may have to pay more and wind up paying 10 or 15 years of experience. So it's higher. You know, it all drives up. But on here, the only thing I can see that's not here would be the Head Start, I think.
Sal, is there, I don't think it's a question, but real quick. There are, in your $5 million, there were a lot of things, for example, weren't there 6 new science teachers? That was
No, what we did in you close, what we did in the money was, remember the jobs money?
Yeah.
You know, we took those 8 people, so we have to pay for those 8 people.
The ARA.
Yeah. The Obama bucks, over 2 years, we split it. So that's in here now, that went away, that 1.2. And what's in here, 8 new teachers. Is it 8 now, Bill, or is it 6?
3 chemistry teachers at the high school.
3 chemistry, right.
2 for the STEM expansion, because we have 100 kids going into, with 2 teachers, so we need to put the 2 in there. And then 2 and possibly 3 at the elementary level, just because of the enrollment. And that's a moving target, so we're monitoring that literally on a weekly basis.
Right, in fact, I talked to the high school principal today, they're doing, the kids doing the course selections now in terms of science, and we'll have a better fix on that.
So, I mean, I think, you know, just, if we're having this sort of free willing conversation here, Madam Chairwoman, I think, and I don't know what the answer is here, but I know that every year if the board requests $7 million, it's gonna be, we're gonna just repeat the same, and I don't know how you fix it, because the amount of tax increase that $7 million requires would be $600 or $700 to every homeowner in the city, and we know there's not capacity there. The amount of new construction that you would be required to fund that kind of increase has never, ever happened in the city, even in the best year ever of construction, so I don't know if that's gonna happen. So, you know, I don't know what the answer is, I guess I'm just sort of ruminating here, but, you know, this is gonna be an ongoing struggle each year if that goalpost keeps moving down, 5 million more, 5 million more, 5 million more. When you look at the level of growth, and even if you compare it to the growth of students, you know, we've had about 600-700 students that have entered the district. The level of growth of the budget over the last 7 or 8 years has been $40 to $50 million, far outpacing the rate of how many new students we have and what it costs to educate them. So, now granted, there's reasons for that. There's pressures by the state of Connecticut with mastery and CAP. There's No Child Left Behind. There's special interventions you have to fund. There's special ed, which is in itself a huge cost. And you know, I'm not sure what the answer is, but I know that, and it's not just Danbury. Believe me, we're not alone. But we are on an unsustainable path, public education-wise, in the state's time. I don't know what the answer is. I hate to be depressing.
Well, I think that, well, you know, you kind of, here's what you're faced with. We're in a few school systems that's really growing. And you know, along with the growing, you have a population that moved from 31%, 32% kids in free and reduced lunch of the district average to 50%, with some schools at 80% free and reduced lunch. Kids with that profile need more time. And you know, when someone's holding you accountable for their growth and their time in terms of what are they doing in school, why they're not succeeding, as we're doing with these state assessments, it's not saying that you're a failing system. I don't believe in my heart we are, but there are kids not getting the kind of instruction they need. That's what Mark's talking about. But even when I look at that over the last 5 years, Danbury, I don't think it's great. We're behind the state average in terms of what our per pupil expenditure. You're doing well with the money that we have.
Yeah.
We really are.
Well, you guys are
You
doing a
know,
great job.
okay, but, no, I think what we've
But
done, the board have
but
said,
but still, our
leave
property
the
tax
kids in the
owners,
classroom.
our property taxpayers bear a much greater burden because we receive so little from the state. The 50% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. Well, okay, how many Manchester kids are on free and reduced lunch? Why do they get $41 million and we get $25 million? Why does Bristol get $45 million? Why does New Britain get $75 million and we get 25? I mean, there's the gap.
There's the gap. This morning, one of our board members sent something to our legislative group asking them that very question. You know, why is Danbury not getting its fair share? I mean, we get maybe, if we're lucky, $20 million, $21 million.
25 million with the 1.7 million that we have to drop.
Okay, and that's what the special ed excess cost, right? So, okay, all right. So, and we're putting out 114 million, and you've got other places getting, like, say, 75 million. Why is that? There's been tinkering with the formula for some reason or other, where we're considered wealthy. We're considered wealthy, and that, believe it or not, that does hurt us. Even though, you know, Mark and the current governor have brought a case against the state saying, you know, the funding mechanism is not equitable, and that's moving forward, but that takes time to recognize that fact. You know, so you got all that, but meanwhile, we're running a day-by-day school.
And that
That's
is
the thing.
I mean, in the runs for that, in that lawsuit, we calculated what we should get, and it's like another $55 million.
$55 million,
Yeah.
right, a year. 52
That's why we
a
sued
year,
the state.
currently. In fact, just to give you progress, we just filed,
We just responded to it. The city received a subpoena for records relating to how we fund education, the quality of our programs, the buildings, you know, the number of books we have, the number of computers we have. And in response to that, we've just produced a big box, several thousand documents. But it's been ongoing. I mean, the case has been up and back to the Connecticut Supreme Court once. It hasn't really even hit its stride yet. We're just starting to get there now. So it's
That's the
gonna
state
take a while.
AG that's subpoenaing stuff from us. So the state of Connecticut, aside from the fact that they underfund us, they then kick us into town and say, now you gotta go collect all this data because we're gonna defend ourselves against the lawsuit brought by the city and other municipalities. Can't make it up.
Mr. Seabury, you had a question?
Yeah, I do, Sal. It's unrelated to where we are right now, but I was talking to a former colleague at the high school recently, and he's a teacher of some 8 years, is I think what he's telling me. And because his salary step was frozen, is this correct? Do teachers make more than he would make?
that's a pretty expensive new teacher.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't.
No, I can't, no. The person, I don't have my books with me, but that doesn't.
Not after 8 years, there's no way.
No.
No way.
Not a math teacher, is he?
You probably a science teacher then.
No, he wasn't science teacher.
Wasn't-
There's no one I can,
I can't think
I know
of-
you're good at recruiting, but you're not that good.
That's right. I can't think of anybody. Because, you know, everybody's on a step, so every year either you freeze your step or you advance your step, or there's an increase added to everybody's step. But you're brought in based on your years of experience and whatever degree you hold. So it would be, I can't think of a case where somebody new would come in.
Well-
When you come into, you said years of experience, do you come in with steps?
You can,
You can.
yep,
If you taught elsewhere, you can get awarded steps.
that's right.
For example, take this, if we need 3 chemistry positions, that's really a shortage area. So if someone's willing to come with us, it's gonna, you know, they all have their masters, and you can rest assured they're gonna have, you know, maybe 8 or 9 or 10 years' experience coming to us. It's hard to find folks out of school that are gonna do that. I mean, sometimes they're just not preparing enough kids to go into education and have chemistry. You may get youngsters on, or adults on what they call the alternative route certification. They might have been a chemist or someone, they'll come in, and then we have the ability to give them a few years' experience.
It's a proportional share.
Proportional share. So they don't really eat up a lot. It's the person that comes, let's say, with 14 years, 15 years, and then we don't make that decision easy. It has to be a shortage here. That doesn't happen too often. And it's usually in the sciences that we have that problem.
And languages.
And world,
Secondary,
that's a
yeah.
shortage here. World language and biology, chemistry, physics. And we've increased the number of kids taking chemistry, taking AP exams, those sciences, which is a good thing. And, you know, but we've had to go out and get the teachers to do it.
Can I
Do you miss me yet?
Can I just make one comment too about the science and the addition of new teachers? Part of what has happened at the high school is that because in years past we've been contracting, we've been getting smaller and smaller, the number of teachers we've had, and we've been working under year-to-year agreements with the teachers at the high school, kind of cobbling together a way for them to perhaps teach more credits one semester and less the other so that it evens out what they teach over the course of a year. But our ability to keep negotiating the stopgap measures we're at an end. And so part of why we're looking to add teachers is because we have contractual requirements about number of kids they can teach in a year, number of credits they can teach. So that's part of why we've got the new people in the budget.
Next year, this year, we have a goal, and sometimes it's less, sometimes a little bit more, it's about 125. Next year, it goes about 130. So, you know, that's allowed us some flexibility. What Kim was talking about, sometimes you have an extra lab or a section, and teachers can do an overload. You know, I mean, if you get two teachers do an overload, you have to bring a part-timer from the outside. You have a lot more options. But then that creates a lot of problems scheduling for kids and what have you. So, and we only do that as a last resort in terms of students. Normally, we have to go out and find a person to do it, and that's been hard to do.
Gladys, do you have a meeting set up for this week? Is it this week?
No, it's our regular board meeting.
Regular
We
board
have a
meeting.
finance committee meeting on Wednesday. Before the board meeting at 6. We have finance meeting.
Yeah, this Wednesday.
This one. Okay, and is there any ex officio members that had a question, or? Mr. Cavo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Dr. Sal. Dr. Sal, I noticed in the budget book that you gave to the council for the education committee, you had a line item in there, I believe it's 627 for gasoline, for $920,000. Is that bus fuel, is that included in the contract with the bus contract? I was very unclear on that.
He's going to take a look now.
Thank you.
The board's considering the bus contract now with some possibilities, but in the contracts we had, we purchased the fuel, because we don't have to pay taxes and stuff, and give it to them, but let's take a look. I think David and Ed are looking at the utility cost moving forward.
Is that diesel too?
Yes.
That's what a diesel, right, but that's gasoline.
The issue you're referring to is on page 7 of the budget book. What happened was, in other years, we had separate accounts for fuel throughout the district for each school. What was done in the 11-12 budget year, all those accounts were melted into one main fuel account underneath educational services, where our buildings and grounds person is, basically manage that. So that line item is $823,000. That's fuel for all the buildings in the district.
Okay, so you combined all the school buildings line items for their.
That's where Mr. Rodriguez used to be, so, you know, that's Osborne Street, we don't use that much fuel there, you know, but that, you know, someone asked that question, and what it is just a fund. It's distributed among all the schools, which run about.
It's for heating fuel.
It's for heating.
Not for gasoline.
No.
Okay.
But it's for the whole district, so thank you for the clarification.
I mean, one of the challenges that we have in reviewing the budget is that, you know, when we do the budgeting on this side, we'll look at the 7-year history for each account and try to make some assumptions about what the expenditure will be this year. But it's hard, I'm not trying to be flippant, but it's hard sometimes to make heads or tails because there's been some changes in the line items over the years. So what means something in '07 may not mean the same thing in '11. And so it's hard to gauge what the history of the spending is, but, you know, I know that David's been through this with Ed a couple of times, and there are significant adjustments that could be made that don't impact teachers or programming or Head Start or anything. Now, I know what you're gonna say, yeah, but what happens if we run out of money in the middle of May, based off of your recommendation for that account? We'll have to deal with that in the middle of May. We're not gonna want to walk in June 30th and say, well, it's too bad, you know, you're bankrupt, sorry, you know, we're not gonna do that to you, but I know that the dialogue's ongoing,
Yeah.
and they're working on that, so hopefully we can close a lot of that gap. We'll tighten up some of that.
The law last year allowed school districts to work with the municipalities to have a set aside of 1%, that we talked about. For that, you know, set aside 1% of total budget. You can place that in there, and then that gets categorically spent for some overruns or can, for example, pay for computers, or pay for a special project. It's the way town saves for a fire truck and things of that nature. They simply took that principle and turned it over to the schools. So we, up until this year, talking about doing it, now would be some way of allowing for this accounting that we're talking about, which is going to be helpful to us.
It's an ongoing project.
Yes,
Sorry,
Mr.
if I
Bell.
could just make one more point. Dr. Sal, I don't mean to be a pain about this, but I
I would really like to see myself personally, if those numbers could be broken down per school. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why is we'd like to see, like when we make a capital investment in boilers or capital investment in windows, we'd certainly like to see if there's a fuel savings or how that fuel savings breaks out going forward, so we can estimate, which of our buildings are better served environmentally, and as we move towards, greener technologies, how we're saving money in our investments and our upgrades. And I think that would help us as a council if we can see those numbers broken down by building. With the new boilers and new windows in the high school next year, I'd like to see some great savings done in that with the money that, we invested buying to fix those windows and boilers. So if we can do that moving forward, I'd like that.
The Honeywell contract requires them to audit every year, so we can provide that to the council, just for the high school. The other buildings, be interesting to see what Broadview has.
Have you seen savings?
Yes, we have. And in fact, they've been doing work on it, so we've been realizing that. That's helped with some of the things that we've done.
Yes.
Dr. Sale, in regard to insurances, okay? I see it's 15% all the way down, and then when you get to athletic insurance, it jumps up to 50% increase. Can I ask why?
What page is it?
Page 1,
I may have to get back to you on some of those things. I apologize.
fire insurance 15% added.
Athletic insurance, 10,000, yeah, I don't know.
Seems like it's,
50%.
it's 50% on athletics, but then 15% on all the others.
Yeah, I don't even want to, I can just check it out. That's put out the bid on, just so you know how that
Okay.
stuff is done.
Okay.
The high incident sports with concussions and things like that with athletics, helmets and stuff, so it might have gone up, but I'll have to check.
I'll look into it. I know we did get I believe, I don't know if that renewal was finally finalized yet for that, so I know we did get some estimates around that number, we'll check.
If an athlete gets hurt at your school, is that what this is for? This insurance will kick in if an athlete gets hurt at school?
That is our insurance, that's correct.
And it's only if that student doesn't have insurance, then you'll kick in as a secondary, or do you pick it all up?
I'd have to
Should
check
be,
the
should be a
insurance.
secondary.
Should be secondary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You need to look into that because, as far as the athletics and everything else like that, usually the homeowners will take care of the first part of it and the secondary kick in.
Okay.
Thank you.
As long as there's no other questions,
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion at this time, please. Motion to recommend that the city council accept the mayor's budget for the Danbury Board of Education for the fiscal year 2012 and 13.
Second.
okay, are there any questions on the motion?
No, Chair, I just might say, this is a work in progress, and just notify you that. So I just want to make it clear for the record that we're still working on a lot of loose ends.
Is there any questions on the motion? All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn?
Well, I'll just let you know, we'll not be good at Monday.
Hi, I'm Sergeant Rory Duraco with the Danbury Police Department. We're asking you to please refrain from using your handheld electronic device while operating your motor vehicle. This has caused citizens property damage, personal injury, and loss of life. So please, when you're operating your motor vehicle, keep your hands on the wheel, your eyes on the road, not on your phone.